Obama's convention bounce begins to come back to earth, and we answer viewer questions. I'm Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.
I'm Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today.
And this is Election Matters. Well, Susan, on Friday you wrote a piece in USA Today looking at the polling data, and certainly coming out of the convention, as your piece certified and our Gallup data showed, Obama got a bounce, Romney didn't. However, it looks like to us, as we track day by day, that it's beginning to fade.
Down to 3 points as of Monday. Now, that is still a little more of a lead than President Obama had going into the conventions, but it's certainly smaller than it was at the height of what we think was the convention effect.
That's right, and we do a rolling average, of course, but we can look at the nightlies, and we just saw it as clear as day and night. When the convention started, night by night, Obama's percent of the vote went up, and it actually, as you said, reached 7 points, but then we've seen it just as clearly, the gap's beginning to come back down again. So it really kind of went up and went down. Now we'll see. You know, it could expand again, you never know. That's why we keep polling, as we say, but it certainly looks like we may end up back kind of where we started with the 1 point lead.
And no such effect from the Republican convention.
That's right.
With Romney. Now maybe that's because the Democratic convention came right on its heels. We do see, though, President Obama's approval rating ticking up just a bit at 50% on Monday, and it's been as high as 52% in the aftermath of the convention.
Yeah, it didn't fade as much, because as you say, we're still at 50%, which is considerably higher than where Obama's approval rating was prior to both conventions, and that stayed more steady. Now that's good news for Obama, because as we know, for an incumbent to be at 50% or higher is where you want to be, because no president who's had above 50% incumbent in our limited record when Gallup's been polling has lost re-election.
Now, one possible interpretation would be that it's a leading indicator, so people feel a little bit better about the job that Barack Obama has done as president, and then will be more likely to support him. But I suppose there's some other explanations as well.
Well, we don't know. You know, all of these are possible good points, and we'll have to keep monitoring it going forward to see what happens. But I don't know where you would rather be as a president. I was thinking about it. We'd rather have 50% job approval, but not be winning on the ballot, or winning on the ballot and not
I can tell you where they'd rather be. They'd rather be winning on the ballot.
Winning on the ballot. Although, as we've said, the approval is a very good indicator. So we'll monitor this. But, you know, we're sitting here and we've got, a couple of weeks before the first debate, which is October 3rd. A lot of people call us up and say, well, what's going to happen now? Is the race frozen in place? Some political scientists say that 2 weeks after the conventions, the candidate who's winning basically goes on to win in their historical record, not based on Gallup data, but their record. But we've got these 3 debates, which a lot of people are going to watch. So I guess that's the real key here. Can the debates make a difference?
Well, we know debates can make a difference. We know that there are at least opportunities for the trajectory of a race to change. And they're probably Mitt Romney's best opportunities to come back from this at least small bounce that President Obama got from his conventions. They're outside of extraneous outside events beyond anybody's control. These are the 3 opportunities for the race to be reshaped.
And the first debate is domestic policy. The second debate is town hall meeting, where average citizens, which Gallup's involved in helping select at Hofstra University, average undecided voters will get to ask the questions, at least part of them. And then the third debate will be foreign policy, which, you know, has been going on recently. But of course, by then, this is, I forgot the exact date, but it's in the October the 20th, 23rd, in that range. Will it be too late because of early voting? Now, that point has been raised a lot, that people have already sealed their vote in. So no matter what happens, particularly on foreign policy in the last debate, it's too late because they've already sent their vote in.
Well, you know, we know from academic studies that we expect about 35% of voters to have voted before election night. That's a lot more than used to be the case with no-fault absentee voting that many states have adopted. On the other hand, I think that people who vote early are likely to be pretty set in their opinions, unlikely to be swayed by whatever happens in a debate, and people who are less firmly tied to a candidate, I think, more likely to wait a while, perhaps see the debates before finally casting their ballot.
Well, that's an interesting theory. You're saying it's the undecideds that will not cast early votes, and therefore they'll be more susceptible to what happens up to the last minute.
I think the people who are most likely to do early voting are people who are not going to be shaken from the candidate that they've decided to support.
Well, we'll monitor that. We're going to put a question in track and say, have you already voted? So we'll be able to get at least some crude indication of what percent voted. But some voting's already started. So even as millions are watching this right now, some out there, it's too late for them to change their mind because they've already voted. And that's fascinating. By the way, Congress is in session. We're here in D.C. Is that right? Does anybody care?
Briefly. And do we expect them to do anything? And the answer to that would be no. That we think congressional action on the big issues facing the country, including these fiscal issues that are coming up with a real deadline, we don't expect action on those until the lame duck session of Congress after the election.
Well, that's what I meant. I didn't mean to disparage Congress, but sitting there at a 13% job approval rating, the average American does, and nobody cares now because, as you say, they're not going to do anything. But my colleague Jeff Jones did an analysis, and that 13%, if it holds through October, will look like it'll be the lowest job approval rating going into election in our record going back to the early 1970s. And we don't know what impact that'll have on the congressional and Senate races because it's a divided Congress. You know, everybody doesn't like Congress, but what does that mean is going to happen? That's tricky.
Right. Republicans control the House, Democrats control the Senate. There's not one party who's taking all the blame. And we know that incumbents tend to do really well when they run for re-election in Congress, but it might be something of an issue in the presidential race. Which candidate seems most willing to take on this unpopular Congress?
Yeah, boy, is it unpopular right now. Not a pleasing place to be if you're a representative in Congress because Americans simply don't approve of the job you're doing. Susan, we get questions.
We do get questions.
We got a couple of questions now. Let's put the first one up there so our viewers can see it that have been asked, sent in to us. A lot of people send this question, and I thought would answer it. Why don't you include third-party candidates in the ballot? We've heard that a lot over the years. Now, in 1992, the third-party candidate made a big difference,
well,
right?
When Ross Perot was one of those third-party candidates who made a difference, and there have been a few others in American history, but generally they don't make a difference. We got a couple third-party candidates this time around who have the potential to have an effect perhaps in a key state. Gary Johnson in New Mexico, he's the candidate of the Libertarian Party. He's former governor of New Mexico.
Sure.
Maybe he pulls enough votes
He ran
there
for
to
the
make
GOP nomination.
that makes enough votes to make that state more competitive than it looks like it'll be right now. Virgil Goode in Virginia, the Constitution Party, has the possibility of draining off some conservative votes there. But as a general rule, they don't have much effect. You put them on a ballot the other day. What'd you find?
Yeah, and Jill Stein, who is the Green Party candidate. Yeah, we did include them. We do test ballots as we go. That's an answer to the question. And each of those three just got 1% when we read their name out loud. So that tells us right now there's no groundswell like for John Anderson or George Wallace or for Ross Perot like we've seen some in the past. And that's why we don't routinely report them.
Now, here's another question that we've gotten is when will we switch to the likely voter model? We're still reporting in the USA Today Gallup poll registered voters. Some other polls have gone to a likely voter sample. Why have we not done that yet?
Well, good question. We think about it carefully, and over the years we've done it at different timing. We'll probably go in early October, and the reason we haven't now is there's some practical reasons, but we're trying right now, rather than project the race, we're more interested in our tracking in how it's moving up and down. And registered voters, we think, give us just a fine semblance of that like we found during the convention. Sticking to registered voters tell us how they're going up and down. Likely voters are useful when you're really trying to project the actual outcome. And a lot of people, we don't know whether they're going to be likely voters and because they answer questions and they may not know how interested they're going to be in October. So that's why we wait until we think it's reasonable to ask our series of questions about how likely you to vote, how interested you in the race, and some things like that. And then we'll report both out so people can be able to see both of them.
Well, I hope if viewers have other questions, they'll send them our way.
Yeah, we have an email address up there right now where people can email in your questions and we'll answer them right here on Election Matters. I'm Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.
I'm Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today.
This is Election Matters.